Welcome back, you guys. This is our Wednesday night lesson. So sorry that I'm late. Well, not necessarily late, but I'm here. But I'm a little bit later than I usually am. I had to teach two classes on tonight. And so now I am here before thou to teach you about the 15 types of depression. Now, let me go on record with this. I don't believe that these are all of them. These are just 15 that I am aware of right now. As I get more information over the years or over time, I will come back and share whatever else God gives me. I pray you guys have had an amazing day. I don't plan on being on here very, very long on tonight because I want to go upstairs and I want to get some other stuff done. All right, Chicago. Hello, hello. God bless you. God bless you. I'm glad to see you guys coming in the room. Like I said, I know it's kind of late. Just finished, actually finished up with my class relatively early. We typically get out by 10 o'clock, but I didn't have a whole lot to give them tonight. So I decided to go ahead and do this because I was actually trying to figure out if I want to do this on tomorrow. Then I remembered I got a hair appointment on tomorrow and I don't remember everything else I have to do. So this is one of the things I'm learning is that I have to give more structure. I've been knowing that for a minute, but I have to start putting stuff on my schedule because every single day I typically have something I'm supposed to do, and almost every day I'm forgetting what I'm supposed to do and what have you. So that's neither here nor there. How are y'all doing? Glad to see y'all coming in. I am glad to see that you guys are having an amazing day, an amazing week. I pray that everything is going good in your life. Again, we're going to be talking about the 15 types of depression. Sister Lakita, you're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Thank you. God bless you. The 15 types of depression, because I believe that we have to come to understand. I believe that if you come to understand the different types of depression, you start learning how to better manage your mind. Mind management is major to God because your mind, biblically speaking, is what the Bible refers to as your heart. God says, guard your heart, for out of it pours the issues of life. So, to God, mind management is essential. Mind management is essential. Another way of saying that is heart management is essential. How you treat your heart, God pays attention to that. You will be judged for how you treat yourself. You will be judged for how you treat your heart. You may say, well, how, Tiffany? If I do wrong by myself and I do right by God's people, then how? Then because you're not giving God's people God's best. You're not giving God's people pure love. You're coming out of a place of religion. The law now, the New Testament law is love God with all of your heart, mind, soul, strength, and love your neighbor as what as you love yourself. So in order for me to love my neighbor, guess what? I have to love myself. And if I love my neighbor in the measure in which I love myself, but I only love myself a tiny little bit, then I'm not giving them God's kind of love. I'm not giving them perfect love, which means mature love. I'm not giving them the measure of love that God would have me to give them, all because of how I see myself, how I treat myself. Do me a favor, guys. Do me a favor. Be sure to like, be sure to share. Facebook, let me know y'all are in the room by hitting the like button, hit the love button, hit the like button, or what have you. Let me know that you guys are in the room. I'm trying to get, I always try to wait for 100 people to get on here before we go ahead and start the lesson. That way I don't have to go back and repeat anything. But let me know how y'all are doing over in the comment section. Let me know how y'all are doing. Has your week been good? Has it been full of warfare? Has it been full of favor? Has it been full of blessings? What's been going on in your life? What's been going on in your life? I'd love to hear from you guys, and that's that. So again, be sure to like and share. I'm not gonna wait around because I know that if I wait around, we'll end up waiting here for another few minutes. People will come in. So let's talk about the 15 types of depression. First and foremost, the word DE is a prefix, and every prefix has a meaning. The word DE is a prefix. Every prefix has a meaning. DE means down. DE means down. The word press, we know what that means. It's the prefix of pressure. It means to put pressure on. The word press is to put force on, right? So the word pressure or depression means to press down. The word depression means to press down. So if something is pressing down, that means that you must be under it. Yeah, did you get that? If something is pressing down on your mind, if something is pressing down on your heart, that must mean that you are subject to that thing. Now, there are some things that are ungodly that you can be subject to, and there are some things that are godly you can be subject to. You can feel or you can experience depression doing the right thing because that sometimes is spiritual pressure from God. And even though you interpret that pressure to be bad, you don't like the way that pressure feels, it is still godly pressure. For example, I have the burden of the Lord. I have a lot of different things. Yesterday, I spent the entirety of the day just working. I'm talking about getting so much stuff done, but I felt the burden. I felt the pressure. I'm sitting there. I got people. I'm texting and I'm doing voice notes and what have you. I'm trying to play catch up. I end up I'm feeling the weight of it, right? I feel the because I realize that I'm behind. But the reason I'm behind is because I keep putting stuff off, and I usually don't do that. But I have my little seasons while I may start putting stuff. So I was putting stuff off. So I'm playing catch up, and I feel the pressure of that, right? If I don't know better, I can interpret that as depression, but it's not necessarily depression. That's more so purposeful. That's more so purposeful. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it again. We're going to talk about the 15 types of pressure because I want you to understand that not all pressure is bad, but you may interpret it as bad. You may interpret it as something demonic. You may interpret it as something that's not good. But sometimes there's good depression. I know that doesn't sound right, but I know sometimes there's good depression. Other times there's not so good depression. Sometimes there's good depression. Other times there's not so good depression. So the first one, number one on the list is grief. Grief. Now, y'all know that grief can be good and grief can be bad. Grief can be good and grief can be bad. This right here, grief. Now, there's natural grief and there's spiritual grief. Natural grief is you're grieving the death of somebody, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, something that is not good that took place in your life. Spiritual grief can be a spiritual disconnect. It can be a spiritual disconnect, but there's grief. Now, again, these are the 15 types of depression. Remember, the word press means to exert force or to have force, and the word D or the prefix D means down. So it means to press down. To press down. So when you're dealing with depression, something is pressing on your heart. That's what depression is. Something is putting pressure on your heart and you can feel it. So grief, that is going to be one of the types of depression. I can honestly say, and I have something similar in my notes, and I pray I don't step over the threshold of that. But I can honestly say that sometimes, whenever you are in a season, sometimes you will grieve a season. You may not know that you just walked out of a season, but sometimes you will grieve a season, and you may do it knowingly, or sometimes you will do it unknowingly, right? Sometimes you may grieve because you know that life will never be the same. So you just walked out of one job and you're starting another job, right? You know that life will never be the same. You just your best friend of 25 years, y'all no longer friends. You know your life will never be the same. So you can grieve that thing. So grieving is basically you purging yourself of that season. Is you purging yourself of that season. All right. And understand this, you have to grow seasons. You have to not grow seasons, but you have to grieve seasons. You have to grieve seasons. I'm being careful because I don't want to trip over into these other pointers. Number two, anxiety. Anxiety. Now, the word anxiety comes from the word anxious. The Bible says, be anxious for nothing. Be anxious for nothing. Anxiety. This is a type of depression, or this is a type of mental pressure that you can feel. Anxiety. If it's something that you are anticipating, something that you want, you can find yourself feeling anxious, and that anxiousness will create depression. This is not good depression. This is bad depression because, again, God says, be anxious for nothing. Be anxious for nothing. So maybe you want that new car. When you were a kid, maybe you wanted some shoes, right? Everybody seemed to be getting some shoes, what have you. So you decided you wanted some shoes. Milo, get away from that door. You decided you wanted some shoes. Now, your parents say, hey, go do better, give us better grades, and we'll give you the shoes. But you decide in your mind, I want those shoes right now. So you go home and you have a complete meltdown. And so what that is more so self-inflicted, but that can form as depression as well because you're anxious. And so you can start dealing with anxiety because you want those shoes. But that is a form of anxiousness. It means to want something before it's season. It means to want something before it's season. Number three, fear-based. Fear-based. This is a form of depression. Fear-based. Now, it can be fearing a thing, fearing a season, fearing a person. It can just be fear-based. Fearing an event, fearing the loss of a job. Fear-based. You can create depression based on fear. If you fear, let's say you got relatives coming into town, and that's more so anxiousness or what have you, but you can still have multiple forms of depression at one given time. but family members are coming into town. And you're fearing what's going to take place because they're toxic. And when they come into town, they always bring something with it. That is fear-based depression. That is fear-based depression. Number 4, purpose. This is a good type of depression. Purpose pregnancy. Purpose pregnancy. Or I will say it this way: God gives you something and you feel the weight of it. All good things come from heaven. You feel the weight of it. That's the pressure God is putting down. Remember, that means to press down. You feel the weight of it. God gives you a purpose pregnancy. Another word for that is creative overwhelm. Is creative overwhelm. I've dealt with that many, many, many times where God will give me something and I feel the weight of that thing. I feel the heaviness of that thing. And I'm going to tell you something. There's a lot that comes into that. There are different, like, we're talking about the 15 types of depressions, but I would call, there are like sub depressions that you have to go through whenever you're dealing with this kind of stuff. This would have to be like written out in a creative's guide, but there are like sub depressions that you can feel. I can tell you the different things that I felt, being a creative person, being a mass producer, different things that I've experienced, different things that I felt trying to push stuff out, right? Sometimes there's that fear of creating it. Sometimes it can be that frustration of things not going in the direction that you wanted to go in. I've been doing this long enough to know that it'll eventually, like, it'll make sense to you eventually. Don't try to figure stuff out. So if you're creating something, let's say you're writing a book and it doesn't seem to be going in the direction that you planned it to go in, understand that it's going in the direction God planned it to go in. So don't get depressed. A lot of times if it seems disjointed or what have you, don't get depressed. At the end of the day, it's going to come together. I've learned to kind of relinquish control and not think that something is not going right. But you can feel depression in that. I notice that a lot of times when it comes to release, I realized one day that I have release trauma. I have anxiety when it comes to releasing stuff. Now, when it comes down to something small that I don't think too much of, I have no anxiety releasing that. No problem releasing that stuff. But if something is major to me, if something is big to me, if something is huge to me, it hurts me to release it. I can finish it. I can write the book. I can publish the book. But to go and start to officially release it to the world, I will hold my baby in the house till it's grown. And I had to realize that. So those are like the sub things that you deal with under a purpose pregnancy. Is Those are the sub things. All right, let me move on. Number 5. This is the one y'all ain't gonna like. Are y'all liking and sharing? Is this not a? This is not what y'all want to hear today. Y'all want to talk about relationships? I need some engagement. Let me know y'all are here. Let me know y'all are in the room. All right, number 5. Miscarriage of an assignment. Miscarriage of an assignment. You can experience depression as a result because the assignment, now even though it's dead, it's still inside of you. So you still can feel the weight of it. Miscarriage of an assignment. Not only do you feel the weight of it, you can feel the depression because I can tell you, and when I say assignment, I don't want you to always think like a book. It could be a book, but I can tell you for me personally, for example, if I don't keep my stuff in order, I can experience depression. And for me, a lot of times I have to learn because I'm always moving in seasons. Like God will take you into a season and I always say you find your legs in this season. I find my legs. I finally find a pace that works for me and I'm able to manage everything. And all of a sudden God just takes he takes me to another season and now I can't find my legs again. I'm back in that little stroller or what have you, scrolling around trying to figure out everything. And I'm back a student. I'm no longer a teacher. I'm a student this season and I can be relatively frustrated. And a lot of times when I'm in spaces like that, I'll find myself working on whatever it is God gave me, whatever's new to me or what have you. I'll find myself overworking in that area. I'll find myself dominating in that area. I found myself feeling proud in that area, but I start noticing other areas of my life that are being destabilized. I'll start noticing that, hey, you haven't washed your clothes in 2 weeks. You need to get up and wash. You need to go do this. You got to do that. I'll start finding that there are areas of my life that I've kind of neglected, right? And I always notice a breakthrough comes when I realize that I've done that. When I tell you what I'm giving you is priceless, breakthrough comes when I realize, Tiffany, you haven't been doing this. And I literally feel like I just woke up. I don't know who I'm talking to. I could be talking to 2 people on here, but I literally in that moment feel like I just got conscious. Like I almost feel like I was in a trance working on this stuff. I almost feel like I was in a trance. I was getting this done. I'm doing this, doing this, doing this, doing this. And then when I'm done with it, when I snap out of it, I have that moment where I look around and I realize, girl, you ain't mopped that floor. Girl, you ain't been to the grocery store. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. That's when breakthrough comes for me. That's when breakthrough comes for me because once I have that moment of realization, I get up and I start doing everything. That's what I was doing yesterday. I get up and I start doing everything. I start doing the stuff that I put off. I start doing it because I realized I was in a trance. I was working on one thing and that thing took over my attention. That thing took over my attention. And when that thing took over my attention, what it did was I'm dedicated, I'm working, I'm putting the effort in, but I'm being this person that it's like I'm saying, I can only manage this. And God is saying, hey, when I give you, and I said this to a student of mine, I just got through saying this to my students. I said, if God gives you one talent, if he gives you one talent and he turns around, he tries to give you a second talent, you don't put the other one down and say, okay, this was the first one. You gave me this one first. Now you gave me this one. So I'm gonna put this one down. You don't do that because God is trying to trust you with more. He's trying to trust you with more. Yes, there's pressure that comes with that. Yes, it's frustrating. And yes, it can feel unbearable. But if I keep carrying them, I will get strong enough to manage them. I'll get strong enough or what have you. But usually breakthrough for me will come when I have that moment of realization where I realize like you've literally put something down. When I go pick it back up and I start working with it, that's when I typically see breakthrough. That's when I find my legs. That's when I find my legs again. And when I find my legs, I'm able to run around on the floor like a child in a stroller. And then eventually God takes me out that stroller. I'm able to carry things. I grew up in that season and the breakthrough comes. It's that simple. I realize what I'm teaching right now is more a grown folks lesson. I do. I feel like this is more of a grown folk lesson. This is not a baby lesson. I could tell, but it seems more of like a grown folks lesson. All right, 15 types of depression. And I won't say that because I believe this will be helpful to everybody, but you got to have a heart to receive. 15 types of depression. Number 6, empathetic. Empathetic. That means it's not your depression, it belongs to somebody else, but you're spiritually sensitive. So whenever you're spiritually sensitive or you're wired prophetically, when you're wired to be super sensitive, you can typically feel the emotions of other people. And a lot of times, if you have no prophetic training, you're going to think that that is your emotion. And so you may find yourself dealing with depression and feeling sad and anxious or what have you, but you don't know what you're feeling it for. And whenever that happens, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, when that happens, many times what we'll do is we'll start shopping in our mind for an issue. Because 9 times out of 10, if you shop in your life, if you shop in your mind, you're going to find some place in your life that's not necessarily right. That's not necessarily good. That's not necessarily healthy. That's not necessarily godly. You'll find something in your life that you realize that, yeah. So let's say, for example, you happen to go to an event, right? And your one of your friends at the event is experiencing depression, or you sit next to somebody that's experiencing depression, and you're in one of those seasons of creativity. This is when you're incredibly sensitive, right? So you happen to be in one of those seasons, and all of a sudden, you get in your car, you feel depressed, and you say, I feel horrible. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't get it. So what you're going to do in that car is you're going to start trying to figure it out in your head. What happened to make me feel this way? What happened to make me feel this way? So while you're in your car, you're driving, and then you remember that Jamie, your friend Jamie called you and you tried to call her back, but she didn't answer the phone. And Jamie got a habit of doing that. So you just like, I'm tired of that girl. Because at the end of the day, when she called me, I didn't see her call. And so I didn't see her call, and now I know she called herself mad at me. So then you're gonna figure that the depression that you feel at that moment is related to that issue. It's actually not. It's actually not. It's related to the fact that you were sitting next to somebody who was experiencing that, or you don't have to sit next to somebody. It can be somebody you have a soul tie with, somebody you're connected to, and now you're feeling their depression. This is why, if you're one of those people, intercession will save your life. And you got to make it a habit to intercede every day for the people that are connected to you. Intercession may potentially save your life. But that is empathetic. That means that depression does not belong to you. Number 7, self-inflicted. Self-inflicted. This is thought-based. God says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. This is self-inflicted. This is thought-based. This comes from us being overthinking creative people who have a tendency to stitch every issue together with stuff that's completely unrelated until we create our own garment. This comes from us, Sister Octavia. I'm so happy to see you. God bless you, sis. But this comes from us stitching together a bunch of stuff that are unrelated. Now, I don't know about y'all. I know that that's something I've done before, especially during PMS seasons, and I had to learn to pray that off in my life. But you stitching stuff together. You sitting up in the office at work, and a girl she looking mean in the face. I don't know why she got an attitude. And then you try to figure out why. This is why I tell people don't try to think with somebody else's head. You try to figure out why. Oh, she dating a guy in HR and he been super nice to me. I hope she don't think I want her man because I do not want her alligator looking dude. I hope she don't think I want him. And so you put that in your head that she's mad because her dude is always being nice to you. That girl don't give three rats feathers about that. That face that she got on her, that she has on at that moment is maybe because she's concentrating real hard, or maybe she's going through something else. But you put that in your mind and you stitch that together. All of a sudden, he seems to be not talking to you anymore, like he's not engaging you as much. So then you put it in your head. You start imagining the fight. You start imagining her saying, you always in her face. No, you always in her face. And you know that girl like you. You imagine them having a fight. And so now you think that he's trying to avoid you because he got that old stupid, insecure girl or what have you. So now you got all of these things that you stitching together. Then you see him talking to, let's say, another employee, and that employee seems to, be a little bit busy, but everybody got their own issues going on. Ordinarily on any given day you wouldn't have noticed this, but because you are stitching something, because you are making something, because you're in a moment of creativity when you should be putting that creativity into your assignment, because you're in that moment, you start stitching together, and whatever garment you stitch together you got to wear. Now you stitch that whole thing together. That's what the mind of the creative does. You stitch that whole thing together. It's so elaborate. It's the coat of many colors, but it's colors of craziness. You didn't stitch this whole thing together, and it becomes this big old elaborate film in your head of everybody being mad or what have you. And now you walking around upset and depressed because of that, because you think that it all started off when he came over and the only thing he asked me was if I had a cigarette lighter. I told him I didn't smoke, and he said he trying to stop smoking. And I told him that my dad used to smoke and he used a cigarette patch, and that's how he stopped smoking. And so I told them that. That's it. That's all we were talking about. But now she came out there. She saw him talking to me. Now she think she think I want Gator Man, and I don't want him. You see how you just stitch something together, and so consequently, you'll create an atmosphere um, where she's going to feel your energy, for lack of a better word. She's going to feel that there's something between y'all. There's something that's not good between y'all. And if she is just as colorful as you, then she gonna stitch together some stuff. Then she may start stitching together that she saw you talking to her man, and when after I saw her talking to my man, that's when she started acting crazy. You mean to tell me she must like him? Now she's stitching it together because of the way that you because of the way that you act. Do you see how the enemy takes two? It's like, how we did the Barbie dolls when we were young. We take them and make them fight. That's what the enemy does with people. He creates this stuff and he makes them fight. I love the accountability, guys. I love the accountability. This is one of those lessons people are just kind of logged into. Like, all right. All right, what was it? Self-inflicted. This is thought-based. That's self-inflicted depression. You have to be careful. You have to cast down imaginations, guys. You got to be careful what you do with your mind. This is a part of mind management. Okay. Number eight, financial. There's such thing as financial depression. This is when you feel like nothing is coming through, or you start feeling like you're a burden to other people. That's typically financial depression. You start feeling like you are a weight on other people. That is mental warfare, but it's financial depression. It's usually the result of you not necessarily being in a great place financially. I won't stand there very long. You start feeling like you're no good to anybody else, or what have you. Consequently, you start sabotaging relationships. You start doing a lot of crazy stuff because you feel like you're no good. A lot of times men feel that, especially when they're married. Men will typically go through that if they lose a job. if they lose a job. I just got through telling my students about this incident that I had on a cruise ship some years ago. I was married at the time. It was the first cruise I had ever taken, and it was me and my ex-husband. And we got on a cruise ship, and while we were standing in line, this guy comes running up to us, black guy. He comes running up to us, and he says, um, "Hey!" And I remember him. The reason I mentioned his color was because the line was predominant, it was mainly white, and I knew that was the only reason he felt comfortable to come up to us. He ran up to, he said, "Hey, can I skip y'all real quick?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So he got in front of us and he started chatting it up with us, right? I've told the story before. He starts chatting it up with us. We talking and laughing. I remember he kept joking about, he was joking, but he was kind of serious. He was like, he kept looking around. He said, "I'm looking for my," he said, "my wife and my mother-in-law here." He said, "I'm trying to avoid them. I'm trying to hide from my wife and my mother-in-law. So I'm gonna try to hide behind y'all." And we thought that was hilarious. So from that point on, it was maybe later that day or maybe the next day or some point on the cruise. Every time he would see us, he would come sit with us. Every time he saw us, he'd come sit with us. One day he came, he sat across the table from us. We were sitting down to eat. He sat across the table from us and he was, talking and laughing. He was a character. He was super hilarious, right? And then I'm engaging him. My ex didn't do a whole lot of talking or what have you. I'm engaging again. I'm talking or what have you. And somehow I go to talking about, I don't remember everything I talked about, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned suicide and what have you. And I'm just telling the story, just like I'm telling it to y'all. I didn't know that God was using me in that moment. And that man started getting choked up. He got quiet. He started getting choked up. He said, "This is how I know God is real. This is how I know God." And he started telling me that he had lost his job and he had been providing for his wife. Like he'd been the breadwinner for like a long time. I don't remember the year amount. I would say 15, 20 years or maybe longer than that. But somehow he lost his job and he felt like he was no good to his wife. He felt like he was no good to his family. So he told me that, after the cruise, he had planned in his head to kill himself. He had told himself that he was going to kill himself after that cruise. But that encounter that he had, sitting across the table, when I'm talking to him, I was like, some people go through depression. I started talking to what have you. He said he was thinking to kill himself. But that moment changed his mind. That moment let him know that God was with him and there was no need for him to consider killing himself. Milo, go lay down. Go lay down. All right. But that's financial. That's an example of financial depression. Number 9, generational. Generational depression. This is just depression that goes through your family. It's something that's normalized to you. It's something that your family never overcame. It could be in an altar. It can be and I'm gonna be talking about this. It could be like and it can be, well, I can say an altar. It can be a demonic altar, or it can be a crossroads where you're supposed to cross to get into another season. And because your family never got past that crossroads, then you start feeling the pressure. Anytime you start getting to the place of breakthrough, you start feeling that pressure or what have you. And that pressure, for the most part, generations is it's been able to push people back or what have you. But you start feeling that pressure. You start feeling that. But that's generational. Number 10, this is an obvious one, demonic. That means you need deliverance. It's demonic. It's an unclean spirit that's in your mind. It's a spirit of torment, and it's saying all kinds of negative things in your heart. It's saying a bunch of negative things to you. Now, let me just go ahead and mention this. When you start dealing with demonic depression, most of the times it's a result of you not guarding your heart and you constantly saying negative things to yourself, not casting down thoughts that the enemy says. When the enemy, the Bible calls him the accuser of the brethren, when he accuses you, you're not casting down those thoughts. When the enemy says you're not good for anybody, when the enemy says don't nobody love you, don't nobody care about you, you're coming into agreement with those thoughts. And when you come into agreement with those thoughts, you open yourself up for the enemy, and then that spirit comes in, and then once it gets into place, it utilizes its access to you to constantly keep speaking negatively to you. That's demonic. Another one could be witchcraft. You could put that in a category with demonic. Witchcraft. If somebody establishes a witchcraft altar against you, sometimes you can feel depression. That depression lets you know that you are under attack. That is an alert of your heart that lets you know that you are under attack. And the thing that you do is you have to pray that thing down. Number 11, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Chemical imbalance. It could be something that's biological, something that's going on in your mind. Chemical. Number 12, I said I was going to move through these fast. Number 12, Seasonal. This is what I got through talking about crossroads. Now, it can be generational in your family. Nobody has ever broke through a crossroad. Sorry. What we got here? Okay. Okay. This. Sorry. All right. Give thou servant a second. In the meantime, in between time, just know that I love me some y'all. For real. All right. Okay. All right, I'm gonna try to make it make sense. I'm gonna try to make it make sense. Ready? This is seasonal crossroads. I just got through teaching my class, so my camera over here opens up for my class on Zoom, and I have to try to remember which class. Which, all right, old season. This is the chasm. New season. Forgive y'all. Do you see what that happened to that nail? They came off at the office today. Okay, anyhow. Old season, new season. Old season, when you come here, the closer you get to here, this is the area where you get to cross over this river. You get to cross over this void or what have you. When you're getting ready to cross over here, you can feel the pressure of it because it's one, the learning curve. Two, it's the grief, is grieving the old season because the more you get, the closer you get here, the more you're going to begin to grieve that season. And three, it is the anxiety, the fear of what's to come. So whenever you're shifting from seasons, a lot of times you feel multiple types of depression at one time. You feel multiple types of depression at one time. So when you're coming here, it's also not just that, but grieving the people that you're going to leave behind. Grieving, like if you're anything like me, when I first started doing, making breakthroughs and stuff like that, I tried to drag every person connected to me across that river. I tried to drag all of my friends and my family members. I was trying to give them all jobs, even though I couldn't pay them. I was trying to give them positions and stuff like that because I felt like, God's going to do something. I knew he was going to do something with me. And so I started, hey, girl, you want to be the manager of my company? Hey, girl, because that was my attempt to cross this with the people. But when you try to cross this with the people, there is an angel. There's going to be a wall. There's going to be resistance because they can't cross that with you. It's not because God is trying to punish them. It's because they haven't developed over here. So what's over here would kill them. It's not because God is mad at them. It's just because over here the pressure is greater. Over here it would completely destroy them. And so when you're coming out of an old season, you know that there are going to be doors that shut. You know that there are going to be losses, right? There's going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to give up. You're coming to your crossroads, and what's at the crossroads? Your cross. This is where you have to crucify your desires. You have to crucify your flesh. This is where you have to crucify a lot to go into your next season. This is actually the place of decision. Right as you're getting up on it, this is the place of decision because right then and there, you feel the pressure. You feel the pressure to stay where you are because you're in a comfort zone. When you're in a comfort zone, you know how to navigate that space. You know how to navigate it with your eyes closed, but you're coming out of being. Give me a second. Over here, the closer you get to this chasm, the more you grow. You're going to grow up until you become the teacher. Now, when you're the teacher, you know this. It's like being in the third grade. If you let me stay in the third grade, I can teach the students, even though I'm 8 years old, right? That's if I was 8 years old, or I wouldn't be 8 years old if I stayed. But if I could be 12 years old in the eighth grade, I could teach the students. I know all of that stuff because I've stayed there for a long time, right? I've stayed there for a long time. But if I stayed there for a long time, that's what we call developmental delay. I would be delayed. Like there's information I should have had at that stage that I'm at that I have not gotten yet because I'm still stuck. Because I'm still stuck. Now I've mastered this season. You know what? I'm a genius over here, but I'm a genius to the kids that are younger than me. But to the people that are in another other season on the other side of this river, I am delayed, developmentally delayed, or they may say retarded. You know, in whatever language you choose to use. But old season, as you come here, you become the teacher. When you get to the space where you're the teacher, it's time for you to you have to humble yourself. It's not easy because here you can navigate this space. You got a voice, everybody's listening to you. You can navigate that space easily. But when you get over here, you got to go back to being a student, which means you got to submit to somebody. And so now over here, you had all these people submitting to you. That's why a lot of people never make it out of here. That's why a lot of people never make it out of here. A lot of people get to this space here and you have to sacrifice that. You got to sacrifice your image, people's perceptions of you. You got to be willing and ready to let people laugh because there are people that didn't like you who will see that as you being humbled. She finally, I'm glad somebody humbled her. I'm glad, girl. You know, she ain't doing that no more. You know, she ain't got that no more. Ha ha ha. And you got to let them laugh. You got to have your moment where they laugh. You imagine this. Okay. I'll give you an example. David's brothers. David had not been favored by his father. You know, David had been put out in the field while the brothers were in the air-conditioned home. Of course, they didn't have air conditioning. I'm just being funny for any of my theologians out there. But I'm saying David had been mishandled, allegedly. David had been mishandled. His brothers had, gone through. So you can only imagine they had written David off in their head. They had written off David. David ain't gonna never be nothing in his life. David gonna be in the field. The only thing he gonna be good for is just man in the field or what have you. We out here, we working for the king. We in the king's army or what have you. You can imagine they had their heads lifted. They got the favor of their dad. They got these decent positions or what have you. You can imagine their surprise when David was crowned king, when David was elected as king. And you can imagine the jealousy, the anger, the depression, the frustration, the confusion that they had when Saul came and got David and brought him into his castle and brought him in and had him singing, singing for him. He got access to the king, not just access, he got favor to the king. That's confusing. That's confusing. You can imagine how they laughed when they found out that Saul wanted to kill David, because in that moment they're like, "See, told you." I knew he was gonna girl. I knew he was gonna figure it out. I knew he was gonna figure it out because at the end of the day, that dude, he won't work that. I was surprised. That's what you have to go through. You have to have that moment where you're hiding out. Don't hide. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you should intentionally hide. I'm saying God may pull you away from things, and people are laughing. People are going through that. So David is going through his season of pressure. That season of depression. David is going through it. But David has to feel it in that season. He got to let people laugh because God's going to exalt him in the next season. Even in the midst of that, Milo, come here. Y'all forgive me. I have to fuss at him when he gets really animated like this. Come here. What's wrong with you? Are you okay? What do you want? You got to go lay down, okay? Go upstairs or you can go lay down. Go lay down, okay? All right? Are you okay? All right. But you can imagine the frustration, right? You can imagine the frustration, or you can imagine the elation, not the frustration. You can imagine the joy they felt because they feel like, oh, finally. Because people want other people to see you the way that they see you. Finally, they see. That's what I'm trying to say. That finally they see, so they got a chance to laugh or what have you. But then David's gonna have his season where he's glorified. David's gonna have that season where he's lifted up. But in order for David to have that season, David has to manage that particular season with grace, honor, intentionality, and prayer. David has to manage that season well, otherwise he won't cross that chasm. He has to manage that season well, otherwise he won't cross that chasm. Okay. So we said seasonal. Number 13, elemental. We're talking about the 15 types of depression. Number 13, elemental. This is atmospheric. This is from the people that you're around, the environments that you find yourself in, or the environments that you put yourself in. It's not always empathetic. It could be empathetic because of the environments you put yourself in. If you put yourself in environments where there are a lot of demons, you're going to experience depression quite a bit because you are opening yourself up for quite a bit of warfare. Elemental. And even when I say that, it's not even always just being around people. It's sometimes it's just being outside the will of God. God told you to move to Texas, but you're still living in Georgia. God told you to move here, but you haven't done what God told you to do. That's elemental depression. That's elemental depression. It could be you having stuff from your old season. This is going to be a little bit controversial, stuff from your old season that you holding on to. That everything that you hold on to creates an environment. That old couch that you got, it's got memories attached to it. It's got whatever. It may got semen in it. Whatever it's got in it. All of that stuff creates an environment. And you'll notice that when you move your furniture around, you'll notice that the environment feels different. You'll notice that when you throw out one piece of furniture, that the environment feels different. And you'll notice that when you clean up your house, the environment feels different. So sometimes our depression is elemental. I can tell you a lot of times I can get up and I can just say, hey, I want to clean up. I think immediately about when I was a teenager. I used to move my room around a lot. I had strong legs. That's what they used to say about me. They said I had strong legs because I found ways to move stuff around rather than asking somebody to come move that big old dress I had with the mirror. I didn't get nobody to do that for me. I would push it with my little body, and then I sit on the floor and I push it with my legs. I put my body up against a wall and I would push that thing. I got it where I needed it to be. Right? I got it where I needed it to be. But I found that whenever I would start feeling stuffy, whenever I start feeling some type of way, just me moving my furniture around, it really changed my mood. It changed my mood. Then I get used to the furniture there. I would have my season of just loving it, feeling like light or what have you. Then eventually I get bored with it. I didn't like the way it was over the course of time. Maybe 9 months to a year into it, I'd be moving my furniture around again. I'd be moving my furniture around again. So elemental. Number 14, association. Association, who you're around, the people that you have, the people that you're not just working with, but the people that you socialize with. You can pick up, and I'm not talking about necessarily because I'm not talking about empathetic. I'm just talking about soul ties. So, for example, if you're soul tied to somebody and they deal with quite a bit of depression, then you may end up dealing with depression. It's not necessarily that you got to be in the same space, but because they deal with it, you may deal with it. So association can create depression. Association can create depression. Last one, number 15, spiritual. Now, I'm not talking about demonic here. I'm talking about word drought or presence drought. I remember God said to me one time that depression sometimes is your spirit man crying out for an encounter with God. It's because you have denied your spirit man an encounter with God. A lot of times we get so busy with life, busy with our jobs, busy in our relationship. We get so busy that we don't seek the face of God. We get so busy that we don't pursue God. And your spirit man needs the water of the word of God. Your spirit man needs encounters with God, and not just Bible study, but your spirit man needs intentional encounters with God where you literally say, I want the presence of God right now in this moment. I'm not going to get up out of this room until I sense the presence of God. Is when you start seeking his face. And a lot of times that breaks depression. It's just seeking the face of God. It will break depression. A lot of times it just has everything to do with your spirit man saying, your spirit man feeling broken, your spirit man saying, I need a genuine encounter with him. I'm tired. I'm gonna say it. Your spirit man saying, I'm tired of the Bible reading. I want to have it. Let's study the Bible, but I don't want just to come read Ephesians 4 and say amen and close it, and you didn't retain anything, you didn't do much of anything. You said you put that on, it's just religion. You cut on some music and you listen to it and you go ha ha ha, yeah, praise the Lord, and then you cut it off and you go to bed. Your spirit man saying, I'm tired of these rituals, because that's all they are. I'm tired of these rituals where at least a witch will sit there until they conjure up their God, till they conjure up demons, but you won't even sit there until the presence of God falls in that space. You won't even sit there because you're not seeking his face. You're doing this religiously. And your spirit man can start feeling dry Your spirit man can start feeling like, hey, I need an encounter with God. I need a fresh encounter. And when you need a fresh encounter with God, many times you have to pull yourself away. You got to have your mountaintop experience. You got to pull yourself away and say, you know what? I need to cut off my computer. I need to cut off my phone. I need to cut off everything. I need to take a couple of days off work and I just need to seek his face. You'll be amazed at how much depression. You may say, Tiffany, I don't really have time for that. The crazy thing is, you mean to tell me you'll go through a week, 2 weeks, a month worth of depression that could have been broken in a day, could have been broken in an hour, could have been broken over a weekend of you just seeking the face of God, but you would rather go through it than to sacrifice the daily routine. Then your routine is your God. Your routine has become an idol. And so sometimes your spirit man is sitting back saying, I am so tired of being put under your flesh. I am so tired of being put under your soul. I'm supposed to be the head, and you got me over here being, you done buried me. I want an encounter with God. I want an encounter with God. I need his presence, what have you. So that's going to be one type. In spiritual depression, that type of depression can be the worst type of depression because all too often we don't get it. All too often we just sit up there and we, like I said, we'll formulate in our minds as to why we think we're going through depression. And we'll formulate it in our minds, not realizing that honestly, just getting a cabin for the weekend, if you're surrounded by people, getting a cabin for the weekend, just going out to that cabin and spending time calling on the name of the Lord will give you the refreshing that you need. Remember, depression means the word D, or the prefix D means down. It means down. So depression means pressure that comes down upon you. It means to press down. God does press us down. Some depression we get comes from God pressing us down because God is trying to get something out of us. Because God is trying to get something to us, through us, and God is trying to get something out of us. So, not all depression is bad. Again, we interpret it as bad, but not all depression is bad. Some of it is bad. One of the things that you want to do, I just gave you the 15 types. One of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you identify what type of depression you're in, because there are many types of pressures. So you want to make sure you understand what type of pressure I'm feeling. That way you know how to deal with it. You want to know how to treat it, how to confront it. If it's demonic, we want to bind up the demon, right? If it's purpose trying to come out, you want to go ahead and submit to it. It's like a baby trying to come out. Also, whenever a kid is trying to come out, you just let the kid flow on out of there, right? You're not going to sit up there and try to keep the kid in. You're trying to get the kid out. So you want to know what type of depression that you're experiencing. That way you can learn how to move. So I'm going to go through them real quick again. Number 1 was grief. That's natural or spiritual. Number 2, anxiety. This comes from anxiousness. Number 3, fear-based. Number 4, purpose pregnancy. Another word for that is creative overwhelm. Number 5, miscarriage of an assignment. That is a real thing. I don't think people realize that's a real thing. God gave you that book, but you made it all about you. God gave you that book, and all you're thinking about is your book signing and all that. So you put it off because you're trying to create this big old elaborate thing around it. And God is like, you're not going to be able to do all that. Like, I got 18 books in you right now that I want you to get out in the next 2 years. And so if we're going to do this, we can't get all of these books out of you if every time you release a book, there has to be this big old parade around you. Sister Renee, you're awesome. Thank you. God bless you. God bless you. Purpose pregnancy. Oh, it is definitely one of the worst. It is definitely, because it has all these subsectors and stuff like that. Again, miscarriage of an assignment is number 5. Number 6, empathetic. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to somebody else. Number 7, let me say empathetic. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to somebody else. And it doesn't have to be somebody you're connected with. It can be somebody sitting on a train next to you. Number 7, self-inflicted. This is thought-based. This is when you didn't cast down those thoughts, and now you start stitching together stuff in your mind and create this big old garment that you have to wear, and you're walking around with this garment on you until you take it off. Number 7, self-inflicted. That's thought-based. Number 8, financial. And this is when you feel like you're no good to nobody because you're not in the best space. Number 9, generational stuff that passed through your family. Number 10, demonic, when you're in need of deliverance. Number 11, chemical, when you need a doctor. Number 12, seasonal. This is when you're at a crossroads and you're having to count the cost. God says before you build a thing, count the cost. You're having to count the cost, and you're starting to realize that it's really expensive. And you're also starting to realize that Your life is not going to look the same. You're not going to be able to navigate it as the teacher anymore. You're going to have to come into it as a student, which means you're going to have to rely on people. And if you got trust issues, that can be a little bit scary. That's seasonal. Then you have elemental, that has atmospheric. It has everything to do with the atmosphere you're in. Maybe you're living with your mama, and in her house, it's just really toxic and demonic, or what have you. That's atmospheric. Elemental, that was atmospheric. Number 14, association, has everything to do with who your soul tied to. Last one, spiritual, and I'm talking about a word drought. I'm talking about a word drought. That means that you're not giving your spirit man encounters with God. You're not studying your word. You're not praying. And so consequently, your spirit man starts to dry up. Those are the 15 types of depression. This is not something that is medical, so don't take this advice and think that you can stop taking your medication or anything like that. This is just stuff that I've learned over the course of time. As always, make sure you pray, talk to your doctor, or what have you. So don't take this and run with it and say I'm taking off my meds and all of that because I know what's wrong with me. Now, I'm one of those people that I believe that if your faith grows to that point, you can get your faith to the point where you can come off those meds, but you want to do that when you have wise counsel around you. Okay, you have wise counsel around you. I'm talking about leaders around you that can sit back and say, we think it's time, we think that you should do it now. But other than that, don't just do it. Okay, anyhow, I love y'all. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.